So November is a lot. November is pretty intense because we have a lot of major transits happening. We also have some retrogrades and we have Pluto entering Aquarius, which is a really big deal. But not surprisingly, November is also, there's an undercurrent of hope and excitement, but it's a very much let's wait and see kind of feeling. And in fact, for November, when I pulled cards from the Soul Care Oracle deck to go along with this forecast, I pulled the Neptune card. And so Neptune reminds us that when there's a lot of change, there can be a lot of confusion and uncertainty. And Neptune reminds us that it's okay that the waters are cloudy right now. We can go with the flow and we'll see how things fall into place later on. And so, as we begin November, that first week of November, I pulled the waxing crescent card, which is again speaking to that idea of things moving into place. The affirmation for the waxing crescent card is I am putting all the pieces together. And so this really points to that first week of November being one where we're trying to feel things out. We're seeing where things can go, trying new things, being a little open and curious. I liken it to putting a puzzle together, but the puzzle's upside down. So you can't see the colors, you can only see the shapes. So it makes it a little bit more tricky. But with November, we are kicking things off right away with our new moon in Scorpio on November 1st. And so a new moon in Scorpio is all about transformation, transmutation, turning what looks like nothing into gold. It's about just transforming, evolving, growing. And a new moon in Scorpio reminds us of our inner power. And it reminds us that we can use our inner power. It's there for us. It's not there for us to give it away to others. It's there for us only. So also that first week of November, we have Mercury entering Sagittarius on November 2nd. And this is really important to just pay attention to how Mercury feels for you when it enters Sagittarius, because this is the sign Mercury will be in when it stations retrograde later this month. But for now, we can enjoy a little bit of Mercury in Sagittarius, where collectively we are open to learning, exploring new things, broadening our horizons. That could be like literal travel. It could be exploring new cultures, learning new languages, higher education, picking up a new hobby, all kinds of things. And then we want to be mindful for November 3rd because that is when Mars will be opposite Pluto. Mars is our action, our willpower, our drive, ambition, our aggression and anger. And Pluto is the things our society tends to shy away from. So, sex, death, power. And so, this transit can drive our ambitions. It can really motivate us to want to win, but we need to be mindful of how far we are willing to go to win. And the other thing to note with Mars opposed Pluto is this transit can also swing to the extreme sometimes of being very explosive, where we are triggered, like our emotions, our insecurities are really like someone's pressing our buttons. And we can be very reactive because of it. And so we have to be mindful to reflect internally of what's going on for us in our inner emotional landscape, to have the accountability to hold ourselves in check when it comes to responding, and that we are responding from a place of groundedness and centeredness and not from a place of emotional vulnerability. So that is the first week of November. In the second week of November, I pulled the Aries card, and Aries energy wants to get things done very quickly. Aries energy, once it has the idea, it's like, why is it still an idea? Why is it not done? And so that to me suggests the second week of November will move very quickly. During the second week, we have Venus entering Capricorn on November 11th. Venus is our values and relationships. Capricorn is very much long-term structure, stability, and goals. And so when Venus enters Capricorn, collectively, we become more focused on our goals that we are most passionate about that align with our values. Another heads up date, though, for the second week of November is November 12th. And that is when Mercury will square Saturn. Mercury is our thoughts and communications, and Saturn is structure, time, authority. And when these two kind of square each other, this brings up a lot of tension. So we can have a lot of black and white thinking, scarcity based thinking, where things are very much all or nothing. And while this can show up as being pessimistic and hard on those around you, more than likely it will show up as you being hard on yourself. So I really want you to give yourself grace on and around all the time, really, but especially be mindful on and around November 12th. And then we move into the third week of November. This is my cat Biscuit here. If you are watching the video, you can see her. And for the third week of November, I pulled the Taurus card. And interestingly enough, this week we have our full moon in Taurus, which is on November 15th. A full moon in Taurus is very grounding. It invites us to get in touch with our five senses, to slow down, which I think is an important thing to note because here it's November 15th. It's the middle of November. This is the time of year where things start to get a little hectic and busy. And I think it's just important to invite some slowness and where you can, to invite some embodiment where you can, to really connect with your physical body. Your five senses will help you do that. So that helps you stay present and not feel so in your head and rushed. Also on November 15th, we have Saturn stationing direct. So Saturn has been retrograde the past few months. And so this is a time to just pause and reflect on what you have learned over the past few months about your relationship with things like authority, time, and structure. On the 16th, we will have the Sun opposite Uranus. And this transit often brings up exciting experiences that we want to stay open and curious for, because this can be surprises, it can be new changes, but we want to try to be mindful that we're not having those knee-jerk reactions and judgments, and we want to stay as open as possible. And then on November 19th, Pluto is going to enter Aquarius. And this is a really big deal because Pluto will be here in Aquarius until 2043. Yeah, that's a really long time. So, Pluto, like I've mentioned before, is the planet of transformation. It deals with sex, money, power, and Aquarius is all about the collective. It's how can we invent, how can we innovate for the greater good, for making sure everyone has a seat at the table, for celebrating diversity, for honoring our uniqueness. And so, with Pluto moving into Aquarius, I anticipate we will see rapid changes in technology. I am interested to see how AI involves with Pluto being in Aquarius. Hopefully, it is. So, with Pluto in Aquarius, this means we will probably see rapid changes in technology. I'm interested to see how AI evolves with Pluto being in Aquarius. Hopefully, it is more using AI for things that actually help us as humans to allow us to be more creative instead of trying to replace our creativity. And then I anticipate there will be more of a focus on things like social justice and making things equitable. Then on November 21st, the sun will enter Sagittarius. And so collectively, this means over the next few weeks, we will all be more open to learning new things, exploring other cultures, and diving deep into our spirituality. And then that brings us to the last week of November, where we have the water card. And so this week we have Mercury retrograde beginning. So the water card is here to remind us to go with the flow and to turn within and trust our intuition and check in with our emotions before we act or react. So this week we have Mercury retrograde beginning on November 25th. So it's a time to slow down and review your communications. That's not only how you talk and share information with others, but also how you speak to yourself and how you process information. And it's a time to review if how you are choosing to communicate, if the words you are choosing, if they are effective, if they are helping you get your message across, if people around you are responsive. Those are the things you can review while Mercury is retrograde. And then on November 27th, we have Sun trine Mars. The Sun is ourselves and our ego. Mars is action, willpower, aggression. And so with these two trying each other, this actually gives us a lovely boost to our self-confidence, our self-esteem. And typically I would say that this transit would be wonderful for beginning a new project, especially something that has been intimidating you, that you've been like, I don't know if I can do that. Because with the sun trine, Mars gives you a boost to your confidence where you're like, no, I can do that. However, since Mercury retrograde began just a couple days before this transit, I'm not going to say flat out, no, you can't begin anything new now. But I will say, trust your intuition, check in with yourself and see what feels right for you. Also, on November 27th, we have Venus square Chiron, which unfortunately can be a little bit of a fly in the ointment situation. Venus is our relationships, it's our values. Chiron is an asteroid. It's the wounded healer asteroid. So anytime you see Chiron, our emotional wounds are going to be like in play in some way. So with Venus square Chiron, this means we are likely to have wounds around self-esteem and especially with Venus self-image come up. And this can be a day where we just feel uncomfortable in our bodies, where nothing like our clothes don't feel right and we just don't feel confident in our physical bodies. And so just be gentle with yourself. Again, I hope you're always being gentle with yourself, but especially be mindful on and around November 27th with the Venus square Chiron transits, that can bring up even more stuff for us to juggle. And so that's just the highlights of the November astrological forecast. If you want more, there's a full breakdown of this forecast in the soul care community. And just to mention it, to give you a heads up, I've already mentioned Mercury retrograde, which begins on November 25th. But if we move forward about a week, on December 6th, Mars retrograde will begin. And so we will be going through a majority of December with both Mars and Mercury retrograde. So that means things are probably going to feel a bit sticky in December. It's very much going to feel like trying to walk through mud. There's going to be a lot of resistance in moving forward. And so you just want to make your December plans with that in mind, where, especially if you're doing any kind of travel, since Mercury is associated with travel, to be prepared for delays. A lot of times, mentally, if we can prepare ourselves for these things, it makes it a lot easier to go with the flow when they happen, when the unexpected happens. And then if we mentally have prepared ourselves for a delay and then the delay doesn't occur, no big deal. I would just caution you to be aware that's coming up for December. December is going to be a kind of like murky kind of month. Until next time.